And let's start with kind of the big news of yesterday, the fact that the president was able to announce, looks like we have a deal on tax reform. What do you think?
Well, I think we do. I think we have, and I think it'll be announced by tomorrow. There are a couple of three things that are not worked out yet, but it is good. I mean, I have to tell you that it's kind of exciting because a lot of our listeners out there, including you, Skyler, are not old enough to really have been there during the Reagan years and when the 81 and 86 tax cuts and the results that they have. And this is essentially very similar to that. So what you're going to have is some major changes in terms of your um, uh, the revenue that's going to be raised. Now, people say, you can't reduce rates and increase revenue, but we did. That's exactly what happened in 81 and 86. The problem was we had a very liberal House and Senate along with a conservative president. So he would make these cuts, and as the revenue increased coming in, then they would spend that much more. And so we ended up with a higher uh, deficit at the end of that, only because they were spending all of the increased revenue that came in plus some. So anyway, we've got the top rates, individual tax rates determined 37%, and the corporate tax rate, they had to move that up from 20% to 21% yesterday. They have a pass-through. This is a major thing that was concerns of people in Oklahoma, and particularly if they have a trust. A lot of oil companies, Hobby Lobby, for example, they operate that, and it would have been discriminatory against them. And so that has been corrected. The individual mandate on the Obamacare is eliminated. So a lot of things are there. Mortgage interest deduction, it has a limit, but it's down to about 750,000 now. So when you add up all of this, a lot of changes are taking place. There could be a few more things announced today, but I'm very excited about it. And let me just tell you, it worked. And I'm going from memory on this, but I can remember when I used this in speeches that the total amount of revenue coming in 1981 was $469 billion. That's total amount coming in. They made these huge reductions. Remember, the top rate went down from 70% to 70, I think it was. No, 90% to 70. Anyway, it was a major reduction, and yet the revenue increased from the 469 billion to 750 billion as a result of that. And 86, the same thing happened. So I would anticipate that. That's the one thing that people shake their heads and no, they just don't believe that can happen. It's going to happen.
So tell me what someone like me, just a basic guy, I don't make a ton of money, but what am I going to see difference? What am I going to notice?
Well, you're going to notice your individual tax rate is going to go down. You're going to be, um, I would say, just as far as an individual that is not attached to any other company that will benefit from it, and therefore there'll be an auxiliary benefit to those who are there. That's the main thing that you would notice that is different, and it's a major tax rate deduction. It depends on where you are on the scale, but there is a scale there that has a major reduction. So I think it's going to be there. It's going to be good for, I don't know, the middle America, whether you classify yourself in that group. I don't know, Skyler, but it's going to be good for the vast majority of people.
What about the folks who say, there's just not, I've heard some things like, okay, the rate goes down, but what you pay in doesn't. Is that kind of thing true?
No.
Okay, well, that's good.
Yep.
That makes it easy. And is it? What are the few things you said? There's a couple things left. What do we have to work out?
Well, let's see. Do you have that list of what? There are two things that are in the middle of the discussion right now. Frankly, I'll have to wait until.
Okay.
Well, wait just a minute now. Which one do you think that would be? I got help here from property or income tax. Well, yeah, the deduction for your state and local taxes, but primarily there are a couple of things that just are not worked out and not put together. One is they have a doubling of the child deduction, and there's one holdout on the Republican side that wants to have more than a doubling of the child tax. or the exemption. And so
Right.
that is a very minor thing. And frankly, I'm very happy with what they came up with. It's twice what it is today. Today you get $1,000. After this is over, it'll be $2,000. So little things like that that are they're holdouts by individuals. Here's the problem you have, Skyler. Anytime you only have a majority of two, and of course, as you know, after the election yesterday, it could be a majority of one for a period of time. Then that puts each individual, and let me be a little bit unkind to my fellow Republicans. There are a lot of them there that love to get the attention, and they can do it by having one person can louse up the whole deal in something as complicated as a tax reform. There's a lot of targets out there. They can say in catering to a group that, I want to have, instead of doubling, I want to have 2.5 times the deduction that we have for child care and things like that. And so it gives them an opportunity to get attention. So anyway, that's kind of what we're going through today. And I think it'll be over tomorrow. I think it'll be a reality. I think it'll be good for America. And I think we're going to have a similar result that we had back in the 80s. The difference being we want to keep a Congress that is not going to automatically increase as revenue comes in. That's the propensity of members of Congress to spend money that doesn't belong to them is overwhelming. I think I said that right.
I think so. So tell me when you think, I know we were talking possibly as early as next week for a vote.
Yeah, I think it'll be, all of it will be laid out, I think, tomorrow. And that gives the weekend for everyone to go over it. But that isn't rushing it, really, because we've been talking about this. Everyone's familiar with the things that you and I just now went over, and there are just adjustments that have been changed. So over the weekend, that could happen. They could vote as early as Tuesday. I think it's going to be a Tuesday vote.
Sounds good. Now, you mentioned the election yesterday. What are your takes on that, especially with the Doug Jones victory? I don't think a lot of people expected that.
Well, I didn't expect it, although the guy that was running, the Republican that we had, I don't ever remember a flawed candidate like that in the Republican Party. That was, and so there was mixed emotions. Do you really want someone like that to win and be out there representing the Republican Party? And some of the things he said are just, are very offensive, and I just don't think that. It wasn't. I look at it this way, Skyler. I don't have any doubt in my mind that in the coming elections, the 2018 elections, the Republicans are going to really take over a lot of seats. Right now, there are 9 Democrats that will be up for re-election in the United States Senate, and that are considered vulnerable. Next door to us in Missouri, just as an example, that one, it'd be very difficult for her to actually win. The only reason she won last time, they had, again, the Republican candidate was a flawed candidate. And there are 2 vulnerable Republicans and 9 vulnerable Democrats. And one of the reasons for that is, as all of our listeners know, that the Senate, those are 6-year terms. So each 2 years, a third of them come up. And when that third includes a lot more Democrats than Republicans or vice versa, then that has a tremendous impact on the election. And I think that we're going to see that in 2018. So and as far as the individual, I don't know the guy, the Democrat who won in Alabama, but it is a very strong Republican seat. And so by 2020, that'll be a Republican seat.
I know we had a lot of listeners who would say they were voting, or they would have supported Moore because he's the Republican candidate, regardless of what he was accused of. But now that he is not even acknowledging defeat, people are starting to turn on him already and saying, okay, well, this guy clearly doesn't have character.
Well, he also said a lot of really dumb things that just in the final hours of his campaign. I guess that was not just desperation, because he thought he was actually ahead. He thought he had the thing won because of the nature of the state of Alabama. But, yeah, I think that's right. The aftermath has not served him well.
All right, sir. Anything else we want to throw in there? I don't know if they gave me a list. I didn't see a list.
Oh, they didn't give you a list. I'm doing my calls this morning, which I do once a week. And there are a lot of things that people are interested in. Of course, my main thing is, and most of the people who are listening to us know, is I've been the ranking member on the Senate Armed Services Committee. We'll be having a big hearing this morning with some of our past ambassadors to different countries in the Middle East. We know right now the problems that exist with North Korea. There can't be any listener out there right now that isn't really concerned that we are in the most endangered position we've ever been in as a country. We now know that North Korea, and it's, you know, the president of North Korea is somewhat of a deranged individual, and he's not predictable. And he has a weapon and a missile system that can reach continental United States. We know that. That's a fact. And while the accuracy is not going to be all that good, if you're sending over something of the magnitude that they have over there, something that is 7 times greater than the explosive power of Hiroshima after the end of World War II, then, does it really matter how accurate you are? The fact is, they've got something that can reach the United States. It's scary. We've gone through a lot of listeners out there were Obama supporters. I know that. But he virtually disarmed America. We are right now in a position where we are. We don't have the. Well, just I can throw out a few examples. Our F-18s, which is a great fighter that we have, only a third of them work now because they've taken parts off of them to fix other things. The first thing someone who is downgrading the military does is do away with the maintenance. The maintenance is not something that's visible. Then they do away with modernization. Now we have both China and Russia are in a position where they are taking away what has historically been our qualitative and quantitative advantage. And that comes from the very top military people. So people don't have to guess whether someone is being extreme, maybe accusing me of being extreme in terms of national defense. But now when you have the military willing to stand up and admit that we have countries that are, some of our allies that have depended on us in the past are lost a lot of that faith in the United States during the last administration. So that's a huge thing that's going on right now. We have, any number of issues. Veterans, for example. You remember when I think you and I talked, I believe we did, back a little over a year ago when we picked up the U.S. News. I can't remember which national publicity it was. They talked about our veterans. It was USA Today, talking about our veterans in Oklahoma are not being properly cared for. And I have to say that James Langford and I and louder.
Mullen. Mark Wayne Mullen.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I had to ask someone for help on that. Yeah, we had one House member that has really got into that big time, and that was Mark Wayne Mullen. So the three of us went over, met with the Veterans Administration, changed the law. And now we found that we had two administrators, one in Oklahoma City, one in Muskogee, that really were not doing a good job, and they had to be let go. And so we had to change the law to allow someone to come in, and it sounds funny for people just out there that are paying their taxes and not paying a lot of attention to details to find out that you can't fire people for inefficiency in many cases because they get reinstated. I went through that when I was, someday we'll do a whole session on what I did when I was mayor of Tulsa, and we found that it was very difficult to cut down the size of government. Well, we changed the law in terms of the Veterans Administration so that we can go in there and correct something that's bad, and it can be immediate in terms of firing someone or changing positions. The other thing we did was we put a mandate that when they come in to examine, I'm talking about the Veterans Administration coming into Oklahoma to look and see what we're doing, that we can force them to take a third party with them to look over their shoulder. And that sounds to a lot of people like it's maybe not necessary, but this has really worked now. We've gone from a 1-star to a 3-star and approaching a 4-star right now in terms of how we're treating our veterans. So that's kind of a happy thing right before Christmas, don't you think, Skyler?
I think so. That's excellent news. I know that's something we focused on last time we spoke right before the Veterans Day parade, and that went off great, and I think that's excellent.
Yeah. So things are happening up here. We're trying to get some things done to take care of problems and net neutrality out in these rural areas. I don't think a lot of your listeners are as concerned about that, but I'll be talking to Woodward here next, and they are very concerned about that, the capabilities that they will have in rural areas. And so, anyway, I think good things are happening. I'm excited about it. I want to wish everyone who's listening out there a very Merry Christmas, okay?
All right, Senator, thank you so much. Good to talk to you.
Nice talking to you, Skyler.